A career in investments is full of opportunities as well as potential failures, as a number of factors play a role, such as timing, judgment, and luck. An investor who has become world famous for his foresights and successful investment calls is Jim Rogers, who joins us today on INSEAD Knowledge. Jim, thank you for joining us.
I am delighted to be here, Professor Fang. By the way, everything you said about a career in investing applies to anything else as well. You have to have all of those qualities, including luck, whether you're playing football, writing, anything.
Thank you. So, Jim, you actually studied politics and economics. How did you actually become an investor?
Well, when I was a senior at a university, I was going to go to law school and business school and medical school. I was a completely confused young man. I applied to and got a scholarship to go to Oxford to graduate school, which was just a continuation of my university career. But I happened to get a summer job on Wall Street, about which I knew nothing except that I liked the guy who interviewed me. So I went to work for a summer on Wall Street and fell in love. I couldn't believe that they would pay me to do what I loved, which was to know about the world and predict what was going to be happening in the future. But they would pay me to do this. So I instantly decided not to go to business school or medical school or law school, and as soon as I could, I went to Wall Street full time.
Where does your ideas come from? You know, you have these long-term calls about China, about agriculture. Where do they come from? I mean, do you travel around and sort of get ideas? You're a famous traveler.
Well, some of them come from traveling, some come from walking down the street, some come from reading newspapers. If you just look around, if you're observant, and I mean, if you see something happen, you can say, oh, that's interesting. Or you can say, wait a minute, what does that mean if something's happening, whether it's riots in the Middle East or whatever it happens to be? If you see something and observe, and then you say, let's think this through, let's think around the corner, sometimes it leads to action.
So how often do you trade and how often do you look at your portfolio?
Oh, Professor Fang, brokers don't like me at all because I'm so inactive. You know, I might buy something and 15 or 20 years later I still own it. The guy's saying, are you ever going to sell? You know, will I ever get the other side of the trade? No, I don't do much at all.
So how long, I mean, is your typical investment horizon? How do you balance this? You have very long-term views.
Ideally, I would like to find something I can own for 20 years, 30 years, something like that. It'd be wonderful to never have to sell something if I could find something so good. Now, there are things like China. I'm convinced that China will be the most important country in the 21st century. So, in theory, I can buy China and never have to sell it. But even then, the companies change, the industries change, so if you're going to be very successful, you need to be on top of the companies and the industries and where the changes are taking place.
What would you say to our students who are in business school and graduating? Some of them will be seeking a career in investments. What would be your advice to them?
Well, unless they really love investing, they should not do it. They should not seek a position in investing, for two reasons. One, investing is hot right now, so a lot of people are drawn to it, but they don't really know it or love it or understand why. They think they're drawn to it. So don't do anything unless you really love it, because you're not going to be nearly as successful if you do something where you have absolute passion about it. Secondly, in my view, the financial business is going to be a terrible place to be for the next 10 or 20 years. That's already becoming a little bit obvious. More and more companies are merging or firing people or laying people off. Governments are raising taxes, etc., on us. So finance is not going to be a good place to be in the next 20 or 30 years. In 1958, there were only 5,000 MBAs awarded per year worldwide. Last year, America alone awarded over 200,000 MBAs, and the rest of the world produced thousands more, tens of thousands more. So there's huge competition now, which did not exist before. It's also a time when governments are doing their best to tax us, regulate us, put us out of business, because everybody's agitated about financial types. And it's a time when the financial community became very leveraged. When I went into finance, Nobody had any loans. I mean, they were mainly partnerships. Even banks had few loans and or little debt in those days. But now all of these financial institutions have gigantic leverage. So when things go wrong, they really go wrong. So it's a terrible place. Lots of competition, lots of leverage, and governments are against us. It's a terrible place to, huge competition. It's a terrible place to go unless you really love it.
Now, for those people who really love it and they still want to go into it, what would you say are the most important skills that they need to hone in order to be a successful investor?
Well, judgment is the one. I mean, 100 people can go into a room and hear the same story. Only 5 or 6 of them are going to get it really right and understand what to do next and what's going to happen. Most of them come out with a conventional view instead of questioning and curious and thinking around the corner. So if you really have good judgment and if you're curious and can think independently, then chances are you'll do well in the investment world.
Where does that judgment come from? Is that an innate ability, you think, or is it something that, you know?
I wish I knew. I'd sell it. Part of it comes, I think, from experience. No question that some of it comes from experience. Bubbles look the same. I now know. You can read about all the bubbles in history. I promise you, they're all the same. Doesn't matter where they were, what country, what era, they're all the same.
People like to say this time is different.
This time is different. There's no question. They always say it's different this time, and it's never.
As people can learn, we can learn a lot from history.
You definitely can. I would suggest your students study history rather than marketing or rather than finance. It will teach them a lot more about investing. But if you can be curious and skeptical and think independently, chances are, and have good judgment, chances are you'll do very, very well in the investment community. But it's not going to be as easy in the next decade as it was in the past 2 or 3 decades.
Thank you, Jim, for joining us at INSEAD Knowledge today.
My delight. Thank you.